So I want you to picture something for a second. Imagine you're walking into a movie theater.
Okay, I'm with you.
You've got your
Yes.
popcorn, you push open those heavy doors, and the scene inside makes, like, absolutely zero sense.
Right, like total chaos.
Exactly. On the left side of the aisle, half the audience is just on their feet. They're cheering, they're throwing popcorn in the air in absolute triumph.
Okay, and the right side?
Pure panic. I mean, people are literally scrambling for the exits, gripping their seats in sheer terror.
Yeah.
And then you look at the person sitting in the row right in front of you.
Let me guess, they're completely ignoring it.
Yeah. They're just casually eating a taco. Just eating a taco while a massive fiery explosion goes off on the movie screen.
That's a completely fractured reality. I mean, everyone's looking at the exact same screen, but they're processing it in diametrically opposed ways.
Which is exactly why we're here today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm so glad you're joining us for this one, because today we are figuring out how that exact movie theater scenario is, well, it's playing out in the real world right now.
Yeah, it really is.
Our mission today is to examine a single 10-word sentence. Just 10 words. But those 10 words manage to simultaneously cause the U.S. stock market to celebrate and the Asian markets to absolutely panic.
It's a fascinating, bite-sized piece of market commentary. I mean, it perfectly encapsulates the sheer chaos of trying to stay informed today.
It really does.
And, it's a brilliant microcosm of modern information overload. The source material we're working with is incredibly brief, but it is phenomenally dense.
Right.
It bounces from this massive geopolitical rumor directly into these fractured global market reactions, and then, bizarrely enough, into internet meme culture.
For tacos.
Right, the tacos. But our goal isn't just to gawk at the chaos. We want to unpack the actual mechanics of this confusion. Like, how does one sentence mean peace in the West and absolute disaster in the East?
Well, let's get right to the catalyst, right? The 10 words that split the room. The source text kicks off with a specific headline that drives this massive divergence in the global markets.
The exact quote.
Yeah, the exact quote from the text is this: Trump tells aides he's willing to end war without reopening Hormuz.
Okay, let me jump in right here, because before we go a single step further, we need to set the ground rules for how we are looking at this.
Oh, I'm really glad you brought that up, because to you, listening right now, we want to make our approach completely transparent.
Exactly.
Whenever a political name like Donald Trump enters the chat, people naturally have immediate visceral reactions.
Totally understandably.
Right. But for this deep dive, we are completely putting politics aside. We aren't looking at who is right or wrong. We aren't endorsing any policy, and we aren't condemning any viewpoint.
We're just looking at the data.
Exactly. We are putting this specific headline under a microscope, strictly to see how the global financial machine mechanically reacts to it. We are treating it as a raw data input.
Precisely. We're observing how the financial ecosystem digested the insertion of this specific geopolitical rumor. And I got to say, the digestion process was violent.
Violent is the right word. I mean, the text highlights a jarring, immediate contrast. It notes that U.S. indices shot up overnight.
So a hugely positive reaction.
Right, overwhelmingly positive.
Mhm.
But live trading in Asia tells a completely different story. The text points out that the KOSPI is down a severe 3.55%, and the Nikkei is down 0.85%.
That is a massive divergence. I mean, for context, a 3.55% drop on an index like the KOSPI, which, by the way, is the major stock market index for South Korea, that's not just a minor daily fluctuation.
No, not at all.
That is a heavy, aggressive sell-off. That represents structural fear. And the Nikkei in Japan following suit, well, that just confirms it.
Okay, wait, I'm stuck on this. Let's unpack this for a second.
Sure.
A war ending is objectively a stabilizing event.
Right.
Are Asian markets really so short-sighted that they would panic sell just because a single shipping lane stays closed a little longer? I mean, peace is peace, isn't it? If there's a rumor about a global conflict de-escalating, shouldn't everyone be thrilled? Why is the U.S. market celebrating overnight while the KOSPI is reacting like the sky is falling?
Okay, so if the headline just read, "Willing to end war," you would almost certainly see a unified global rally. Like you said, peace is generally fantastic for business.
Right.
But you hit on the exact mechanism causing the panic. You underestimated its scale. It is not just a shipping lane.
Okay.
The sticking point, the absolute wrench in the gears here is the second half of that sentence, without reopening Hormuz.
The Strait of Hormuz.
Yes. We need to talk about the physical geography of Hormuz to understand why South Korea and Japan are panicking. The Strait of Hormuz is a waterway between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman.
Okay.
And at its narrowest point, it is barely 21 miles wide.
Wow, that's tiny.
It's incredibly narrow, and yet roughly 20% of the world's entire global oil consumption passes through that tiny bottleneck. 20%.
That's wild.
It is the single most important oil transit choke point on the planet. So keeping it closed is a big deal.
Okay, so it's like telling two different farmers that a massive multi-year drought is finally over, but the main reservoir dam that waters the valley is going to stay permanently closed.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. So the farmer, who happens to have a private well on his property, he celebrates the rain. But the farmer who relies entirely on the river realizes they are still going to lose all their crops.
That is a perfect way to visualize it because it maps exactly onto the differing energy profiles of the U.S. and Asia. The United States is the farmer with the private well.
Because of domestic oil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Over the last decade, the U.S. has essentially become a net exporter of energy, largely due to domestic shale production. They are far, far less reliant on Middle Eastern supply lines than they used to be.
Got it.
So when U.S. markets see that headline, they process the first half end war, they see de-escalation, they see reduced geopolitical anxiety, and the indices rally.
But then the sun comes up in Asia, live trading starts.
Yeah.
And the KOSPI and Nikkei algorithms are reading the exact same 10 words.
Right, but they're reading them through a completely different economic reality. South Korea and Japan are the farmers relying on the river.
They need that oil.
Desperately. They are massive manufacturing and export hubs, but they possess very few domestic energy resources. They import the vast majority of their fuel, and a huge percentage of that comes directly through the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, wow.
So for them, without reopening Hormuz means the fundamental economic threat hasn't been removed. If a war ends but you still can't power your factories, it's still an economic disaster.
So for the U.S., the headline reads, conflict over, stability returns. But for Asia, the headline reads, energy bottleneck permanent, prepare for crisis.
Exactly. It is the exact same data point, creating two entirely different realities simultaneously.
That's so crazy to think about.
Yeah, one hemisphere sees a cleared runway because they aren't tethered to that specific supply chain. The other hemisphere sees a brick wall because their entire industrial base requires that waterway to be open.
Which is just wild. I mean, if multi-trillion-dollar algorithms and massive global institutions can't agree on what a 10-word headline means, what hope does a retail trader on their phone have?
Honestly, very little.
Which brings us to the psychological toll this takes on the actual human beings consuming this information. Because here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, the human element is where the author of this source test makes a fascinating pivot. They move away from the macroeconomic data of the KOSPI and the U.S. indices, and they describe the visceral, everyday experience of interacting with this news.
Yeah, the text writes out this cycle. It's so absurd, but so incredibly accurate. It literally goes like this global energy crisis. Then an arrow pointing to a taco emoji.
Yeah, right.
Then an arrow pointing back to global energy crisis. Then another arrow pointing to a taco emoji.
The endless loop.
It's the ultimate doom-scrolling experience. I mean, think about how that feels. Has you, listening right now, ever caught yourself in this exact loop?
I know I have.
Right. You're scrolling through your social media feed, and you read a deeply reported, terrifying article about a global energy crisis. You are reading about closed choke points, inflation, real-world hardship, the KOSPI dropping 3.55%.
Your cortisol spikes.
Yes. Your heart rate actually goes up. And then a fraction of a second later, your thumb swipes up, and you're staring at a meme about a taco or a video of someone's cat.
And then you swipe again, and you are right back to the existential threat of an energy crisis.
Exactly. What is that doing to our brains? I mean, we aren't historically built to switch from saber-toothed tiger attack in the village to, hey, look at this funny rock in a matter of milliseconds.
We absolutely aren't. What you're describing is a phenomenon often referred to as context collapse.
Context collapse. Okay.
Yeah. When we consumed information historically, there was a physical and temporal boundary between serious news and entertainment. You read the front page of the newspaper for the crisis and the comic section for the laugh.
That makes sense.
But the architecture of the modern internet feed violently compresses those experiences into the exact same space at the exact same time.
It flattens everything. It makes it feel like the medium itself won't allow you to take the news seriously, even when the news is deadly serious.
Exactly.
The taco devalues the crisis, But the crisis completely ruins the taco. You just can't fully engage with either of them.
That flattening effect is crucial to understand. The author isn't just making a funny observation about how distracted we are. They are pointing out the normalization of extreme volatility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, when heavy world-altering concepts like the geopolitical maneuvering around the Strait of Hormuz are consumed in the exact same breath as casual internet culture, our neurochemistry just gets exhausted.
Which is burned out.
Right. We are bouncing between a cortisol spike from the crisis and a cheap dopamine hit from the taco.
And the result is that you just feel numb. You are aware that massive structural shifts are happening in the world, but your immediate personal environment is just feeding you an endless loop of disjointed trivia.
It makes you feel entirely unmoored from reality.
Which naturally leads to the ultimate and arguably most cynical conclusion of our source text.
Yeah, it gets pretty dark here.
It does. After setting up this massive geopolitical rumor, the fractured market response, and the bizarre psychological whiplash of the taco cycle, the author delivers this really heavy final thought.
Let's hear it.
They say, I don't think anyone trading with public knowledge knows what's going on anymore.
That line hit me hard.
Same. It feels so validating, but also incredibly bleak.
Let me push you on this, though. So what does this all mean?
Is the source genuinely implying that everyday retail traders, the people reading the news, looking at their brokerage apps, are essentially just guessing in the dark? Are we all just trading on tacos while insiders play a totally different game?
To answer that, we have to talk about the mechanics of information asymmetry.
Okay, information asymmetry.
Right. For a long time, really since the late 90s and early 2000s, the fundamental promise of the internet age was democratization.
Everyone has access to everything.
Exactly. The prevailing theory was that if you made data public, instantaneous, and accessible to everyone, you would level the playing field. The guy sitting on his couch with a smartphone would have the same public knowledge as a Wall Street insider.
Right. The idea that information is power, so infinite information must mean infinite power for the little guy.
Exactly. But what this author is astutely pointing out is that the sheer volume and velocity of public knowledge has actually become a weapon used against the retail trader.
Oh.
Yeah, when your public knowledge consists of a feed oscillating between energy crisis and a taco emoji, and you are trying to parse why U.S. markets are up while Asian markets are down based on a single vague sentence, well, that isn't actionable intelligence.
This is noise.
It is deliberately disorienting noise. This raises an important question about the utility of the daily news cycle for retail traders.
So we feel informed because we are constantly consuming data. But it's an illusion. We don't actually have the framework to interpret the data.
You don't have the framework, and more importantly, you don't have the hidden metrics. The author draws a very hard line between public knowledge and whatever is actually driving the smart money.
Right, the real data.
Yeah. Institutional players aren't doom-scrolling social media to decide how to trade on the Strait of Hormuz. They aren't trying to interpret a politician's vague statement through a news article.
So what are they doing differently, like mechanically speaking?
Mechanically, they are tracking physical realities. They have algorithms hooked up to satellite imagery, monitoring the exact number of oil tankers idling outside the Persian Gulf.
You're kidding.
No, seriously. They are tracking the transponder data of shipping fleets. They are calculating the exact fuel costs of rerouting a supply chain around the Cape of Good Hope down to the penny in milliseconds.
Oh.
They are trading on the physical movement of the world, while the retail trader relies on the public narrative of the world.
Okay, that makes it so clear. It's like trying to navigate a ship through a Category 5 hurricane, and the only tool you have is a weather app that updates every other day, and half the notifications are just ads for local restaurants.
That's exactly it.
You aren't navigating. You are just being thrown around by the waves.
And in a highly complex, interconnected financial system, if you are operating strictly on what the general public sees, you are caught in the whiplash.
You're in the movie theater.
Right. You are reacting to the overnight U.S. rally without understanding the underlying Asian market panic. You are reacting to the shadows on the wall, not the objects casting them.
That feeling of helplessness the author conveys at the end of the text makes total sense now. It's the realization that the feed itself is broken.
Yes.
Reading the daily news cycle isn't giving you an edge. In many ways, it's actively disorienting you. It's a funhouse mirror masquerading as a window to the world.
It challenges the very utility of the daily news cycle, especially when it comes to high-stakes decision-making like financial trading. If the inputs are fractured, the outputs will be chaotic.
Man, okay, let's zoom out and connect all these pieces together.
Mm,
We started with a massive geopolitical rumor about a potential end to a war and the status of the Strait of Hormuz.
right.
And we dug into the mechanics of why that single 10-word sentence created a split-screen reality. U.S. indices soaring in relief overnight because of their domestic energy independence, while Asian markets like the KOSPI and Nikkei bled in live trading, reacting to the structural threat of a permanent energy bottleneck.
And from those macroeconomic mechanisms, we moved into the micropsychology of the individual.
Yeah, the fun part.
Right, we explored the surreal energy crisis taco cycle. We looked at how the architecture of modern information feeds forces context collapse, whipping our neurochemistry between existential dread and trivial internet culture.
Which ultimately flattens our ability to process reality.
Precisely.
Which led us to the author's heavy, inevitable conclusion that the entire stream of public knowledge has become so noisy, so contradictory, and so utterly divorced from the hidden metrics driving real institutional decisions that anyone relying on it is essentially flying blind.
I think the most important takeaway for you, the listener, is validation. If you consistently feel confused by the news, or if you feel a sense of whiplash when you look at the state of the world versus the state of the markets, recognize that it is not a personal failing.
You're not crazy.
Exactly, you aren't missing something obvious. As this brief source text perfectly illustrates, the current landscape of public knowledge isn't just incidentally confusing, it is structurally designed to be disorienting.
It's the movie theater where half the room is cheering and the other half is panicking. You were entirely justified in feeling like none of it makes sense. But that leaves us with one final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up today.
Let's hear it.
If the traditional stream of public knowledge, the endless, doom-scrolling feed of headlines and taco emojis, is no longer enough to help you understand what's actually going on in the world, how do you change your own media diet?
That's the real question.
How do you step out of that theater, or at least change your seat, so that you aren't left entirely in the dark when the next crisis or the next taco hits?
It might be the most essential question for navigating the modern era. You have to learn how to identify the hidden metrics in your own life.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, demand to know the mechanics behind the headlines, and keep looking past the tacos.